All right, Locker and Philosophers fans, we are here with episode 7, I believe, with me and Mike D. Mike, how you doing?
Doing well. What's up, Carlos? Go Lions in the background.
Yeah, for real. So this is our first video interview where we're doing it virtually, so this might get a little crazy. All right. So as always on these episodes, we are going to be starting with our lessons from the mat. So Mike, what did you learn this week from the mats?
So my lessons from the mat this week was in regards to kind of everything we were dealing with the foot sweeps and the underhooks and working the takedowns from those positions. So my lesson this week was, when Dave asked the question, I think it was yesterday actually, when he's like, "Hey, how many of you guys have you know attempted this in your roles this week, right during the week?" And it's one of those things where it's like, I think I did, but I'm not sure, kind of thing. And then he made a great point, that's going to go along with, one of the philosophy readings I'll say at the end. But he made a good point. It's like, okay, we're practicing, we're drilling this, we're learning it. But then if we're not trying to implement it, especially, in a live situation, it's then, how are we really going to learn it and get better at it, basically. So for me, the lesson was, it's just a reminder that, as we are working whatever that technique is for the week, try to use it at some point, right? Try to even though you have what you want to work on, maybe in your own kind of head based on your own game and stuff like that. I mean, really try to implement like what we are learning that week, so it kind of stays fresh and helps with the learning and evolving as a jujitsu player, not just a grappler. So for me, it was just a reminder.
Yeah, and for me, going along with that, I'll say my own thing too, but going along with that, I've been trying to implement the different things with different body types. Like if I just, and different skill levels, like if I just try something on somebody that's way worse than me and I can keep hitting it consistently, it's like, okay, that's good for building that, the muscle memory, that neural pathway or whatever. But I need to try it on different people, different strengths. Like for example, when I try to get different setups for my stand up against somebody like you who is a lot stronger than me and has some good collar ties, and it's hard. Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to clear those collar ties and get my underhooks and do these different things. It's like, okay, well, now I need to resort to something else. So like with you, it's okay, yeah, maybe I'm not gonna necessarily be able to get this underhook to this foot sweep, but I can start working to a Russian tie and kind of dragging you to the ground, or just, all right, screw this. I'm going to pop his arms up and then I'm going to just blast W or do something. But, you know, still trying to work those different things and make those mistakes. So, going along with that, my actual lesson was when when I hit that duck under on you, and I hit the duck under and I was like, all right, sweet. Now we're both on the ground. But I didn't follow it up and I kept my hips up, and you ended up coming on top because I didn't I didn't end up squaring my hips down to the mat and preventing you from getting up on top. So I was just happy with the first step and didn't finish the move. So how that relates to life in terms of just work and, basically just life in general, is you can't be happy with the first step. You need to finish it and, you know continue and be consistent with the next steps, kind of like what we learned from junior and just how consistency is key. If you're just consistently hitting the first step but not finishing whatever you're trying to do, then you haven't accomplished anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the jiu-jitsu sense, okay, yeah, I got you on the ground, but I didn't get my points because I wasn't able to hold you down. And now you're on top, and that's a whole host of other issues. So I would say that that's kind of what stuck with me this week. And I think I even said it when it happened. I was like, "Oh, well, here's my lesson. Here's my
You did,
lesson
you
from the
did,
mat.
yeah.
Yeah, I need to finish my takedowns." So
Yeah,
That was my lesson.
and Dave always, he's called me out on it a few times before, and not only Dave, like Dave has, and then even where I train Krav Maga too, like there's something. So even when we're drilling like the takedown and whatever that takedown is from a standing position, going through like finishing the whole like motion of the move. So you get the takedown, and then especially the more we train, the better that we get at jujitsu and understanding the things. So that's like, work on the technique, but then like kind of finish, the whole thing. So we're not kind of creating these bad habits of like stopping at a certain point or delaying. So even like, sometimes if we're working on something, I might not, in particular, it was one time where we were getting to like an armbar, but then I wasn't like really finishing the armbar kind of thing. And he's just like, hey, you gotta like treat it like it's a real rep, or like it's an actual, like you're gonna apply the submission. Obviously, we're doing it in the drilling and controlled fashion. So he's like, make your partner tap, like get that drilled into your head, so you're doing it good, right? You're like, your technique is actually, you're going through the technique, and you're not creating these bad habits of like, okay, maybe my legs aren't squeezing the arm enough, or maybe there's too much space, or whatever these things are, but I'm not going to be able to see it if I'm not actually like finishing the rep, and taking it kind of through the whole progression. So yeah,
How do
that
you
that
think
was a.
that how do you think that relates to, say, business for you? You've been an entrepreneur now for 15 plus years. How does that relate?
So that would relate. So some of the things, so finishing, just kind of like what you said earlier, finishing what you started to do, uh, with work, there's always going to be tasks. There's going to be things that, especially being an entrepreneur, you have this like a daily list, let's say, of things to do. Just from a daily standpoint, you have some things to do, but then, life things happen. So you might, whatever you start the day off with, a list of some things to accomplish or whatever, that tasks to finish. And then, you might get XYZ kind of pops in there without being planned. So you got to be able to adapt to and kind of like pivot in a way. But the lesson from the mat, like on just kind of finishing the technique, is like, okay, even if I do um, kind of table something to focus my attention on something that takes priority, it's like, okay, don't forget about that other thing, right? Don't let it just sit there. So it's just being mindful of like, okay, what I have to do, and then what's coming up that's kind of forcing me to maybe turn my attention, but then also not losing like sight of these other things that need to get done. Because then it gets piled up, and then you kind of lose some structure, and then like the next day, some of those tasks might get spilled over to there, and then it just, for me, that kind of helps me like, okay, make sure that I have, I don't want to go. I kind of, when I start my days, I don't really want to have it to be. I think scheduling's super important to make sure that you're scheduling the correct things to do, right? Um, but you have to also allow, especially being an entrepreneur, depending on what, like my line of work too. Um, if I get a call from a client, I'm not going to just say, "Hey, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I can't really handle this thing right now." So I got to be able to have like, give myself grace and not you know, um, necessarily having to accomplish all these things that I need to do that day. But at the same time, I have to also have like the discipline of saying, okay, I didn't get to this, but where can I need to finish it, whether it's tomorrow, later that day, or find a way to kind of keep those tasks, keep checking them off and completing them, and, making the attempts to getting those cleared out.
So being structured but flexible at the same time,
Very much. Yeah. Yeah, some
which I
structure I
think
think is super important, but the flexibility it's you got to be flexible though. Absolutely.
when I think that also relates to what we were talking about with the lessons from the mat, where, well, actually more what I was talking about, where if I'm just super stuck on, all right, I'm gonna, do this one thing. Like if we're starting from standing, all right, you know, I'm just gonna be working on my double legs. Like I'm only gonna focus on the wrestling and not try different judo throws or whatever to get this person on the ground. But say they're a better wrestler than me and that's not happening. I'm not going to forego another opportunity that I see to accomplish the same task just because I'm so stuck on one thing, right? So I think that that also kind of circles back to what we were talking about with the lessons from the mat. So that was good. Um, do you have any other topics you want to cover from around the lessons from the mat segment?
So again, there is something, and it kind of was reminded of it from something different as well, but it relates to this. What Dave was saying. Practice. The lesson that you're learning, the technique that we're drilling, practice it. It's fresh in the mind, and that's something that kind of relates to also whatever you're. So for me personally, like if there's something that I'm reading that day, or something that I'm trying to learn, some whatever it is, there is that part of it where you need kind of like you need to make sure you're integrating it too. So it's like not just like reading the thing and like reading it and move. And so sometimes people get caught up in just like reading, or if I'm using reading as an example, like they'll just read this book or read this passage or whatever it is and then move on to the next thing. But there is something to be said, like, okay, you're reading it now, like kind of integrate it, contemplate, think about it. How does that relate to you? What do you feel about it? How does it relate to your life? So you're not just like you're trying to understand, whatever that teaching lesson, whatever that thing is from what you're reading. So for me, it is a reminder too, and a lot of the things that I like to read each day. It's like, okay, um, sometimes it might just be one passage of something, and then just that's it. But then sit with it, integrate it, and really like try to understand it instead of just reading it for reading its sake and like moving on.
Well, being intentional about what you're doing is kind of a theme that I've noticed just in your life in general.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just being intentional with what you're doing, making sure that it relates or is relevant to the rest of your life. I think that's
Yep,
a
being
good thing
intentional is
for
very important.
yeah. I think that's a good thing for everybody to take with them. So on our next segment here, I put out on our Instagram requesting questions from the fans, and boy, oh boy, was our inbox filled up with questions. So, Mike, this first one's going to be for you. Other what other kind of philosophy do you adhere to or do you read besides Stoic philosophy?
So I love all philosophy. So I'm not just like Stoic philosophy. Philosophy is amazing, as is all the other types of philosophy. Whether it's like philosophers from all different parts of the world, from Asia, from Europe. I mean, different countries in Europe, from the United States. America has some great historical philosophers. So I'm really like um, I like it all, honestly. Like there's even there's stuff that when you read, I really take like the philosophy thing, like the lover of wisdom, really is like that's the key for me. It's just taking the wisdom from different people around the world, different periods of time, and then you start to see like the reason why I say I love it all, because I think it's very important. I mean, you can find there's going to be philosophers, or certain philosophies like from different regions or whatever periods of time that you might kind of like take to a little bit more, for sure. But reading, or trying to learn from all these philosophers over time, you start to see like there's a lot of, I mean, over all these years, there's a lot of common virtues, a lot of common things that they all share, in a sense that you're like, okay, I mean, they're saying it over and over and over again through these periods of time, throughout the world. So it's just that's got to be important if they're all kind of saying the same thing, or really saying the same thing, right? So that's why I like to really broaden it, and just all philosophy in general. Um, that's what I would definitely. So there's not like one that I like the best, but Stoicism's like tends to be the most popular, or the most, that and like Greek philosophies, like the two most probably read philosophies, maybe I would, or even for like the somebody who's not really into philosophy necessarily, you might see a lot of the Greek and Stoic philosophers, because they're amazing. But there are so many. I mean, Confucius is from Asia, right? From so he like that's there's tons that you can get from him. um, so I would just tell people, hey, man, just open your mind up to reading it all. Like just, and then you'll figure out, like, you'll figure out what you like and what you kind of take to. But even the stuff that I wouldn't say I don't like it, but even stuff that I might not, read up as much on, it's still, there's still stuff that you can take from it that's beautiful. So yeah.
for sure. So I'm not as well versed in philosophical readings as Mike D, as anyone that knows me will have assumed. But what has resonated with me most about Stoic philosophy, which is pretty much all that I've read philosophy wise, is that it's all about having an internal locus of control. So what resonates with me is that it focuses on your response to what has happened to you and not you controlling your reaction to what happened versus trying to control or being mad about something that you don't even have control over. The only thing you can control is yourself, and Stoic philosophy is all about that tenet. So that's kind of what has resonated with me most about Stoic philosophy.
Yeah. And that's one of the, honestly, like, I mean, you could say this about a lot of the things that you learn from just philosophy from people. Um, but that what you just said is so important. Like this, it's like that Viktor Frankl, like between stimulus and response, like that gap between those two things. That's where your freedom is, to where you can choose how you react to something, and that doesn't mean that it's going to, if something bad or negative is happening to you, it doesn't mean that you're just like not choosing to, you're ignoring it and letting it happen necessarily, but it's just how you react, how you let your, like, to your point, your internal well-being, how is that affected. And because once that gets all jacked up and like stimulated, and then you're raging inside, or just chaos inside, right? Once that starts to happen, then it really takes away like the freedom of thought, like your clear thinking and your ability to not only like your well-being, but just your ability to make in my opinion, make the best decision depending on what you're dealing with. So I think that is huge for people. I mean, just like a little basic example is road rage, right? Like road rage is so, like, it's just like, and I used to, I was never like a big road rager type of person, but I'd still like get annoyed with certain things for sure. And then just like in my car be like bitching or whatever about something. But one of the things, it's like you start to realize, you're like, man, okay, so if somebody cuts you off, whatever the thing is that irritates you, and you're driving, you don't know. I mean, so I'm always like, okay, that person cut me off. Who knows what they're dealing with? They could just be a terrible driver. They could be distracted. They could be, maybe there's an emergency. Maybe they're trying to get somewhere because something is happening that they need to get there, right? And there's an emergency going on. So I don't really know, but like what I do know is like I don't want to let myself get all worked up, and then feel like it affects like the rest of the day in a way, right? It kind of like spills in, it seeps into like some of the things that you do moving forward. So I just don't want to allow myself to get triggered in that way. So it's just like, okay, even if you react kind of like, even if it triggers you right away, like you can catch yourself and then take yourself
Yeah,
back and say, okay, it's not worth it. Just let it happen. We're safe. Nobody got hurt. Whatever the thing is, let it go. So yeah, that's a great point by you.
for sure. All right. So another question was, what was a big takeaway for you guys from the last episode with Christine and Dan, or Dan and Christine Sebastian? So for me, a big takeaway, one thing that really struck me was just the statistics she was talking about, where that more first responders die via suicide than in the line of duty, which I guess when I think about it, that's true. I know that in my life that is true, because I know or have heard of some officers in my departments that have killed themselves, way more so than the ones that have been killed in the line of duty. Um, but I mean, that just shows that that's a legitimate problem, obviously. And her piece about how therapy is work, and how the therapist is just kind of a facilitator, and that the subject needs to buy in and put in the work themselves. That really struck me because it's people think so. Full disclosure, I've never been to therapy in my years as a cop. Like it, I never really. I approach things differently so that I didn't struggle with that stuff, which is a conversation for another day. But um, I think that a lot of people just let stuff fester, and also they kind of seek out trauma in a way. But again, that's a different discussion. Um, but you need to be willing to put in the work, and therapy isn't just a magic tool. And also what she was saying about how you need to maybe try a few different therapists before one actually, is the one that's for you. Those points all struck me pretty heavily.
Yeah, and for me, it was there's a lot, but like I'd say one of the things was I think you kind of mentioned it too is the person has to want the help too. They have to realize that they need the help, need the whatever level that is, need to talk to somebody. They have to be ready, willing to be vulnerable, right, with somebody, which is hard and opens up. I mean, you have to be vulnerable is very hard, especially for a man, right? So like I think that was the key thing that really sat with me because it's true. I mean, you see it. It's you know all you can do is offer things to people, right? You can offer your groundedness. You can offer uh, an ear to listen to them, right? Like a space for them to share and feel safe and listen. You can offer them, just your insight. I mean, you can do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it's you can't really do it for them, right? So I think it's that when she made the point of like, hey, they have to be ready and know that they need the help too. That's because a lot of people they might kind of be wrestling with that internally, like I don't need help, right? Because sometimes it's like a pride thing too. I
Oh, for
mean,
sure.
I'm gonna say like I've never been to therapy either. I mean, I've like had like what I would consider therapeutic sessions with like people I know, like friends, and where you're having deep, but even that was like more in recent years type of thing. That wasn't something that I necessarily did, when I was younger or whatnot. So that was even newer to me at the time. But I find even that, even like being able to, you find somebody who really knows how to actively listen, like that's therapeutic. But like in a therapy setting, I've never been there to something like that. But in even like my initial reaction, um, like to myself would be like, okay, I don't really need to go to a therapist, but like I don't know, maybe I would, maybe I do sometimes. I don't know. So
Yeah,
there is that like initial thing like I don't need it, I'm good. And then you're good until you're not. And then sometimes I feel that people don't know that they need it. They're kind of in that space of where they think they can uh, figure it out. They think they can handle it. Whether it's through suppression or distractions or whatnot. So I think there's like something that needs to like turn on in their head that says I need help, and that's the
yeah,
biggest thing.
for sure. All right. So the next question is, what is a common myth about your job or field of expertise? So we're both in real estate, but Mike, you're definitely more of the expert in that realm than I am, since I'm very new to the game. So, what is a common myth about real estate professionals? And you can do property
Common,
management, like you have your
you
hand in a lot of different aspects. So,
yeah, no, a common myth. Let's say, and I mean there. I'd say one of the most common myths for real estate in general would be that. Let me see what I. Probably that there's not a lot of work involved in because a lot of times like, there's so many moving. I mean, you're experiencing it now. There's a lot of moving parts, and then it only starts to become more and more the more clients, the more things that you're navigating, you're juggling at the same time. Like so if you have one person, one client that you're dealing with, that's one thing. But then if you have like let's say 20 or whatever it is in your pipeline. Some of those are in, and they're all in different phases, whether it's like a listing or a buyer. You might be out showing a lot of homes. You might be under contract and dealing with that part of the process. And then you might be listing homes. You might be getting ready to list homes. And then some homes might be on the market and you're having conversations with clients about possible price reductions or whatever the thing is. My thing is, I think that real estate there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things that go into it, even from like the person standpoint, right? Like, because there's a lot of emotions, right? Somebody's selling their home, like, especially they lived there for 20, 30 years. All their memories are there. Their kids grew up there. They're moving. Now they're getting ready to move. Maybe they lost a loved one, and it's just the one person, living there now, and they're getting a roof. So there's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of that goes along with it too. So I would say that one of the most common would be just that there's not a lot of work involved in kind of just selling a house, let's say. But yeah, there definitely is a lot going on there, through just everything. But yeah, a lot more than what people think.
Okay, for sure. So for me, I'll just I'll just do the cop answer for this. So what is a common myth about cops? I would say that the most common one is that A, it's a bunch of dudes that were bullied in high school, and B, that it's just a bunch of like gun loving country boys who are all like the same kind of person. So the A bullied part, I I mean, I don't actually know any cops that have told me they were bullied. Um, so that's just a common misconception, but also cops are people. So there's just a wide range of cops' experiences before being cops. And, there's all different kinds of personalities. One of my buddies who's a cop, he is about to get a full leg sleeve of Star Wars stuff. Like, he's a nerd. like there's a bunch of nerds that are cops, a bunch of video game, like super, super serious in video games and just like building computers and that kind of stuff. Um, Obviously, there's a lot of people that are into guns, but yeah, there's just a huge range of people in there and in that profession, and there's a lot more that are nerds than you would think. So I think that's just a common myth. All right, next question is Mike, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Definitely more introverted, more comfortable in that space for sure.
Yeah,
But
I'd
I
with that
force
one.
myself to, you know, get uncomfortable though. So I try not to be stuck there the whole time. But I definitely am more introverted, and I have there'll be times where I catch myself kind of turning into like going into like a hobbit mode, and you know going away from the world for a second to take a step back. So I would say naturally that my pull is to be more introverted. Yeah, for sure.
So for me, the answer has shifted a lot. Um, I definitely used to be way more extroverted than I am. And yeah, I mean, all through college and then my first few years out of college, I was super social, always out there with people. Like, I'd literally go out and be with people just to like recharge. Um, so it's that classic, like, where do you find your energy or whatever? It was with people.
Hmm.
And I think part of that may have been that I just didn't like being alone, um, and like having to be introspective and stuff. So maybe that was part of it. But
There's power in that.
yeah, and then the last few years, I've just liked being, in smaller groups or by myself or with my wife more than with big groups. So I part of that I think was the job, but we'll see how that changes, going forward. But I would say
Yeah.
that I'm now more in the middle, like more. I would still say I'm probably more extroverted than introverted, but it's definitely like a smaller group. Like, I feel more recharged being with smaller group than large groups like I used to be.
Yeah,
All right,
and I like the being around people is important. So it's not even um, it's just but what you said there, the I definitely do not enjoy large groups as much, you know. But yeah, I've always like being social and being around people. There is I think human nature, humans period, just love to be connected, right? Like tribe and being connected is important. So there's always like a pull. I don't know, like you can actually speak on this too, but that like there's like a reason why punishment in prison is or even jail, right, would be like solitary confinement, right? Like you're alone in this cell by yourself, away from people. Like, you can't socialize. Like there, I think, and it's hard for people to be
oh for
alone,
sure,
right? So yeah, I think being around people is not a problem. I love it, but it's just there's certain things like that I'm just not as like the spotlight type of thing, right? So I'm a little more like to be a little bit more low key with things. That's where my introvert kicks in.
for sure. All right, so now we get into the more difficult questions. If you could have a drink with any historical figure, who would you choose?
There's so many. I don't think he drinks though, so I would be the only one drinking. I'd pick Nikola Tesla,
All right,
just because his brain is. I mean, and it's one of those things where I wouldn't even understand what the guy is actually saying. So it would just be an interesting conversation just to talk about. If I were able to have a conversation with him and he can just tell me, you know, just share whatever he wants to share with me, whatever he just tell me everything type of thing. I would love to just get in that guy's mind and just, learn from him directly and not through like, books later on in the years. And but he'd be the guy that I'd probably pick right now.
so I recently read Animal Farm. Wasn't one of the characters in there based off him, or am I completely off base?
Um, well, I know Stalin was in it, right?
Yeah,
Uh, I don't know. I read that in like eighth grade. I haven't read that book in a
I'm
while, so
googling it
I'm
right
not
now.
sure. Yeah, I'm not positive there.
Yeah,
But I mean, what that guy is, what Tesla's done, though. I mean, it's just, and if you read his biography and just do a historical kind of research on him, it's just fascinating. Especially at that time, you're like, yeah, it's amazing stuff. So
yeah, for sure. So my vote, I'm not finding a quick Google answer on that, but my vote would probably be George Washington. Um, I think that he was an amazing leader, obviously, and I think the main part that I'd be curious in talking about, would be just how he managed the growth of the nation, and because he didn't want to be president,
hmm
and back then, their communication was you were writing on a little piece of paper and having some dude on a horse go deliver it from Washington D.C. all the way down to Georgia. Like you wouldn't be
send the
hearing for
pigeon.
yeah, exactly, or even communicating with like France to go. Well, when Ben Franklin was in France trying to get them to help us out during the Revolutionary War, like you weren't hearing from each other for like months because you had to send your letter on a boat and then had to get there and then they had to write it and then another boat had to come back. Like just how he was able to lead in that kind of environment would just be super interesting to me. And then just managing, I think I said this already, but managing the growth of the nation and dealing with, there were a wild amount of egos trying to politic their way through that. So having to manage that would be very interesting to learn about.
Could you imagine like people these days like waiting for 3 months to get like just in general, like they don't, we're all like we want instant,
Yeah.
like we want stimulus right away. We send a text, you want a response right away. It's like, can you imagine? It's like, oh, I'll see you in 3 moons. You're like 3 months, like, and then what are you doing the whole time? During the 3 months. I mean, I'm sure he's got a lot of things to do, but then you're like, did that guy stop off somewhere? Did something happen? Like, like it's just
Yeah.
so
Well,
funny how long information takes back then. But like now
Yeah.
we're just it's just so instant, to get
When
anything in.
thinking about it too, from the sense of like when he was communicating with Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson was over in Europe during the Revolutionary War trying to. I don't remember who Thomas Jefferson was like a ambassador to, but you know he was George Washington was having to communicate back and forth with these ambassadors, you know, that were communication wise months away and trying to make sure that they were getting these other armies and navies to come help us out. And, he didn't know for months at a time, like, are we going to get reinforcements from this other country? And even when they respond, now it's going to take them still another like month to get there, help us out. And then also, what if the boat carrying your letter like gets hijacked by
Yeah.
some pirates or goes full Titanic on it and sinks? Like that would be an issue. So,
Then you show up to
uh,
the battlefield and you're waiting on these extra the support that doesn't show up, and you don't even know, did they screw me over or did the message not get there? So then assumption, it's like there's just so
yeah,
much stuff that can happen. Yeah, it's fascinating.
that'd be
That'd be
interesting.
a really good one.
Yeah, we need to block off a large chunk of time for that one for sure. All right, last heavy hitting question: if you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
One, so like a meal, is that, do I get like a thing with some sides, or is this just like one piece of food? Like I want to. So I want to know,
Well,
like,
I
if
mean,
it's a
I
meal, I'm
don't.
gonna pick like a few different things that I'm gonna create as a meal, or am I just picking one food? This is important. All
All
right,
right, so
I'll just I got
well,
it.
I
I
mean,
got it. I got
all
it.
right, let's
Steak
hear
and eggs.
it.
That's it. That's what that would be my. I would
No
love.
carbs. I'll
No, I
allow you
mean,
a carb in there.
honey,
Some Dr. Sebastian
honey.
sourdough, maybe.
Yeah, that's, dude. I crushed that whole thing in a day and a half. Like a day and a half. The whole. I mean, that's oh, if the sourdough is an option, I would put her
I feel like you
sourdough
can
in
have
there.
two, especially if honey's going to be one of your carbs. I think you can have two. You can have sourdough
Her
and honey.
sourdough, 100%. I would put that in there because steak, eggs, her sourdough, and some honey. That's it. That's my meal.
All right. Well,
That's the
my
winner.
name's Carlos, so I got to go with fajitas.
Fajitas
Uh,
are good. Steak or chicken.
they're not limiting me to one meat source, so I'll go. I'll get the
So
mix.
one meal, I just want meat. Is my. You want the mix? Okay.
Yeah, and I mean you can have those breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's so many different things you can do with it.
Yeah, fajitas are great.
So yeah, I'm going fajitas with
Are
that
you
one for
do
sure.
you like you can like them both, but do you prefer fajitas more than tacos?
Yes, I do for sure.
Me too. I love
But
tacos though.
yeah, when when I'm going somewhere, like if I'm at a restaurant, best bang for the buck is always
Fajitas.
fajitas.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, for $18 or whatever it is, you can usually get like I don't know. I'm trying to think of what the number is, but I always get like I always need a refill of the tortillas.
Yeah. Oh,
So
always. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean that's like seven, eight, maybe like thick tacos. I mean that's what a fajita is. It's just taco kind of that you're making yourself. So yeah, bang for the buck, it's definitely fajitas. And they give you the guac too. Like you're not paying extra for the guac. It's definitely the best bang for the
That's
buck.
solid. Yeah.
So
Fajitas
yeah,
are
so
good.
I would say fajitas. But all right, on to the next segment, which is philosophy with Mike D. What you got for us?
All right. I have. Actually, this is going to go along. I'm going to read this. This is going to go along with the lessons from the mat too.
All right.
This is going to be a little Stoic philosophy, which we will definitely be reading. I'll be finding some nice philosophical quotes and messages and stuff from other philosophers as well. But this one is going to be Stoic philosophy again with my guy who, I don't even know if you asked me earlier or not, but like, so in philosophy, my favorite philosopher is going to be Epictetus. He's just like the one
Yeah.
and he's a Stoic philosopher. He's the one that I just resonate with the most. His mind is, it just everything that he says is it goes along. It just hits home. So he's like the one that I gravitated towards in the very beginning the most. So he's going to probably be quoted a lot. But so this one is going to be from the Daily Stoic, the book. Highly
By Ryan
recommend people
Holiday.
get that. Yep, highly recommend that book. So this is going to be learn, practice, and train. And the quote from Epictetus says, "That's why the philosophers warn us not to be satisfied with mere learning, but to add practice and then training. For as time passes, we forget what we learned and end up doing the opposite and hold opinions the opposite of what we should." So I think that's a strong reminder to, even like watching an instructional video on jujitsu, let's say, right? I can watch an instructional video, but if I'm not practicing or training, what are you really gaining out of it, right? And then there's so Ryan Holiday actually adds. I'll read this part that he kind of touches on here because it's really nice. But um, so Ryan Holiday says it is true with philosophical principles as well. You can't just hear something once and expect to rely on it when the world is crashing down around us. So he goes, remember, Marcus Aurelius wasn't writing his meditations for other people. He was actively meditating for himself. That's why they're called the meditations.
Mhm.
So even as a successful, wise, and experienced man, he was, until the last days of his life, practicing and training himself to do the right thing. Like a black belt, he was still showing up to the dojo every day to roll. Like a professional athlete, he still showed up to practice each week, even though others probably thought it was unnecessary. So that's why even like those things, oh, you're like even black belt, it's this level of black belt where sometimes it's like the journey doesn't stop there either. You got to still practice, still work on your skill, right? And I
Mhm.
think that is said to be with like not only just like a martial arts, but your just life in general, right? Your mindset could need work, constantly feeding your mind. That's why he mentioned Marcus Aurelius's meditations. It was his daily journaling that he was doing it for himself. So it's a great reminder.
For sure. And that reminded me of some conversation I've had with my buddy who's a member at one of those Gracie gyms and like the Henner Gracie gyms. And in those places, you don't roll until like way later in your career, like a
At
year
least a year.
plus
Yeah.
in. Yeah. And I disagree with that because then you're learning all these moves, but you don't know how they show up in practice. You don't know, all right, from for example, like the trap triangle dilemma. If you don't know that, like if you just know a triangle and you just know an omoplata and you just know a trap triangle armbar, but you don't know that, you know, the, the smooth segue between each one of them, then you know three moves, but you don't know the connection and you don't know how they can all fit together, how you can make it a dilemma for that person that's defending that, you know, they're kind of screwed whichever way they choose. So, how this relates to that quote from Epictetus is that, yeah, you can learn, but then you need to practice and practice in a realistic scenario, not just drill that move all the time. Drilling obviously is necessary, but you also need to have some resistance and you need to know how it all fits together to actually grasp the concept. Because if you're just drilling or if you're just learning a technique and you just know that thing, you need to be able to detach and see, you know, what comes before it and then what comes after. If you just know what the letter D is, but you don't know that A, B, and C come before it and then E, F, and G come after it,
Hmm.
then, you know, what is C? You don't know how to put it together with any other letters to make it a word.
Yeah, especially without the resistance, it's like it's that's why even positional rounds are nice because you get some more resistance there, right? Um, yeah, even with rolling, I think it's super important. I don't know. I just feel like you and at the very least, as you might not like. I went in knowing zero about jujitsu essentially, right? I had like a basic, more of like a primal, instinctive thing of grappling, right? Like just kind of idea, you wrestle when you're a younger kid, whatever. Like so, some
Just a,
basic kind of
a
instinct.
bear.
Yeah, just some yeah. But at the same time, I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on, what these names are. There's Japanese names for a move, the same move. Another person might call it by like a Brazilian, kind of like the way they labeled it, same move. But so you're just like, I'm confused with all these things in the beginning. But at the very least, rolling in the beginning, I mean, I think that's where for me, I was like, okay, focus on defense, right? Framing, get uncomfortable being in these crappy positions. And then while I'm there, figure out like, how am I going to get out? Like it's a game of inches and just kind of work from that standpoint. So for me, I told myself in the very beginning, I remember it was like after like probably 3 weeks in, I was like, okay, this is going to be a long time before I start feeling comfortable.
Hmm.
Just with like moves in general, like getting my body up to like even going for submissions. Like I just realized like in the beginning, I was like, okay, I'll figure this out, and then I was like, okay, maybe it's going to take a while. But I think
Yeah.
just getting in there, and then I told myself, just be defensively sound, right? And just that alone is going to be useful at every level, right? Like you can't have like being great at defense. I think is going to be helpful no matter what belt rank you are. So I think rolling allows you to do that, right? Allows you to work on your defense at least, and you're just understanding like what side control is, and then how like it sucks when you're in this position of when somebody's just dropping their weight, and how they use their weight, and then that too, like rolling allows you to understand like how to use your body,
Hmm.
especially when there's like 100% resistance, where drilling, not as much without the resistance.
For sure.
But yeah,
All right. So that is the end of episode 7 with the Locker Room Philosophers. We appreciate you guys for all those questions. Keep them coming for sure. The more questions we have, the more we can pick through them and get better questions for you guys and be more entertaining. So feel free to send all those in to either lockerroomphilosophers@gmail.com or on our Instagram, which is Locker Room Philosophers. So, all right. Thank you guys.
thank you.